Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to On the Bad Bar podcast. Of course, your host, Christopher Menning. I'm joined today by the CEO of Soho Hospitality, Rohit. So good to have you here. How's life?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me here. It's this is my first podcast, so I'm super excited. How's life? Life is good. I would say, like, from on a personal level, I'm just trying to keep myself centered. So that's something I'm thinking.
That's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
Well, we had a call recently, a phone interview, and we sort of went over a lot of things that's going on with you and the business. You seem to be just constantly evolving and changing and opening things. So that must be quite a lot, you know?
Yeah, I think that's one of the things I think about. I'm inherently so ambitious, and I want to do so much, but I always say that happiness is what matters, right? I mean, we need to do what we love and we need to fulfill our ambitions, but we also need to understand our limitations. I think that's kind of the thing that I'm thinking about nowadays.
I'd like to touch into that a bit later, actually. That's very important. But I think it'd be great to hear about your story because you've had quite an interesting career. I guess you've seen Bangkok from so many different angles, but you've also been around the world, right? So New York was one point.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about your sort of career history?
Yeah. So I'm a Thai citizen. I'm born and raised in Thailand. International school. Went to New York City to study university. I went to New York University. Studied in the Stern School of Business, and actually I've never worked in hospitality. I'm purely in hospitality by passion. But my career led me into the tech space. My first job was a senior business consultant for Arthur Andersen, which a lot of people, you talk to Gen Zs, they don't even know about this company, but Arthur Andersen was the largest accounting firm in the world. It had 80,000 employees, and wow. I didn't work in the audit practice, audit and tax, but I worked in the business consulting practice. So I actually come from a technology background. I'm a Microsoft certified systems engineer, by the way, which this might be the first time I'm actually telling people that. but so that's where my career started in technology. Yeah.
Okay. And do you still use some of that technology now? Or?
I think I'm lagging. When I look at where we are as an organization, I think I'm lagging. But going back into my career, I started out at Arthur Andersen, and then in the late 1990s, there was the first .com boom, and everybody was, in New York was a startup, and we would walk around with business plans. And it was, I think, the early stages of venture capital and that whole startup environment. And, everybody was walking up with a .com plan. And it was the questions we used to ask ourselves when we met at these, capital raising, events, and there were plenty of them around the city, was like, the first thing we'd ask is, are you B2B or are you B2C? And I started a startup at that time. And I was too young for that, to be honest. It was a .com business, and then the World Trade Center came. I was in New York when it collapsed. I saw the whole thing.
You were there? Wow.
Yeah, I was there. And then the economy tanked, and then B2C meant back to consulting, and then B2B meant back to banking. So that acronym almost changed when the .com industry went bust. And at that time, that was a pivotal moment for my career, because the economic environment was really bad. So I actually had to leave New York, and I didn't leave it on my own terms.
Okay.
And so that was 2003. I moved from New York City back to Bangkok.
Yeah.
Wow. So that was a big, like, that was, I would say, the first shift of my career coming back home. And that was not an easy transition.
I can imagine. I mean, different cultures, different ideologies as well. When did Soho Hospitality come into play then? When was the birth of that?
So long story short, I came back. My father wanted me to join his textile business, and I was like, I'm never joining his textile business. Okay. And he said something to me that still resonates with me today, but it's also why I didn't join his business. He said, it's the easiest thing. You just have to take over a business that's already successful. And I basically said that's definitely not what I wanted.
Not challenging enough.
But if you look at where my career got into hospitality, I didn't want to join the textile business. I was sitting in my dad's office for a while, and I started another tech business, which I ran, a software development company, which I ran with my cousin for about 6 years, from 2004 to 2010. It did not work out. But at the same time, my father was building the Fraser Suites in Sukhumvit Soy 11.
Right.
I always had this passion for real estate, not really knowing much about it, but I was always into, passionate about hotels. When I lived in New York, I was passionate about Ian Schrager, Philippe, Starck, and all the things that they did. Keith McNally, Pastis, and all the restaurants that he had opened up, and Danny Meyer, Shake Shack, that was there when I was living there. But I was more of a customer and more just of a passionate interest as a consumer. But I didn't know that while I was doing that, I was kind of behind the scenes building up my foray into hospitality. But in 2004, my father wanted to build the Fraser Suites. I wanted to do something different. I brought 2 architects from New York to Thailand. Both of them now are very successful, have businesses in Thailand. A gentleman by the name of Patrick Keane and Stephen Odell. We started a design company together called Sachdev, Keane Odell Sachdev. And Patrick decided he wanted to leave and go back to Australia. Stephen and I started a design firm together. And then in 2010, we also ran that for about 6 years. We grew it to about 40 people. So I was building a hotel with these architects, started a design firm with Stephen because Patrick had left. And then eventually Stephen and I decided to part ways, and I sold my company, my design company, to Stephen. He still runs a pretty successful design company. And then I built the hotel. So at that point, in 2007, we launched the Fraser Suites. It was my first hotel development, but I was purely just the asset manager for my family. It was family money. It wasn't my own business. And on the other side, once Stephen and I had parted ways, I decided to start Soho Hospitality. So I was kind of do things at the same time. I started a design firm on my own called Soho Hospitality. I called it Soho because I wanted to bring the New York essence of design. I wanted to bring like New York lifestyle offerings because that was what I knew. That was what I experienced. And I thought it was lacking in Thailand. I didn't at that time know what I was going to do. I did not know I was getting into restaurants. And so that was really where it all started. That was like around 2010. I started Soho. I was doing design work. I wanted to do F&B. And in 2012, I'd gone up to the rooftop of the Fraser Suites and I saw this beautiful space and the beautiful views. And I told my father, we should open a rooftop here. And my father said to me, son, we are not in the entertainment business. My father always told me that we're not going to get into alcohol. This is what my father said about his father. But somehow I convinced my father and his brothers. And that's how we opened up Above 11 in 2012. And then we opened up Charcoal in 2014 in the same building. So that was where I got into hospitality. And what I wanted to do at that time is bring this kind of flair of great elevated dining experiences, not fine dining, but ensuring that it was value for money, experience oriented, and unpretentious. And I think I think the fact that I did that before the wave of lifestyle dining restaurants came. I was kind of before that curve. I think that was the precedent of success, because I think if you come before the wave, then you ride it. And I think that in 2012, and now there's a lot of other groups that have come up and that are doing some great work. But in 2012, I think in terms of this particular space in between casual and fine, I think I was one of the first guys who really did that in terms of the rooftop, dining experience. And I was also probably the first Peruvian restaurant in Asia. I mean, I brought Peruvian food to Thailand in 2012. People were asking me, what is Peruvian food? Nobody knew what it was. And I basically said to them, it was the Thai food of Latin America. And now Peruvian restaurants have exploded everywhere. There are, some more that are coming into Thailand, and, so that's kind of like, I'm sorry if I've taken a long time to explain,
it's what you're here for.
But that was really how it all started.
It's funny to know that Above 11 maybe never could have happened if your father had his way. But that's crazy, because it's such a I mean, I've been often, and it really is a great experience, like you said. It gets busy as well. I mean, because hundreds of people, right? It's a huge venue.
You know, the funny thing is, 2012, now it's 2024. We've got so much on our plate, but Above 11 is still the highest revenue generator of all of our restaurants.
Wow. Okay, doesn't surprise me. But I think it's you've been since 2012, right? It definitely has become like a bit of an iconic place for a lot of tourists that come in. That area, of course, a lot of tourism, which is great as well. From what you've just said as well, it seems like you love starting things from scratch. Like it seems you've had a lot of businesses along the way, and you've got new businesses coming up. Is that something that you really...
You know, that's a really funny point.
Yeah.
Because I love the ideation and that creative process.
Right.
But I have a funny story. I met an investor once who came to my office, and he basically he was like, Rohit, you know, you're really, really good at what you do. I mean, these brands, they're great. But at some point, you're going to have to stop creating more brands. So,
True.
you know, I love that. But I do believe that you can't bite more than you can chew. Mm-hmm. And you need to be realistic. And I think that at some point, and I've already discussed that with my team, they laugh at me. At some point, you need to know when you're going to dilute. You know, you only have so many hands. You can only give so much attention to so many brands. I mean, the hotel guys have done it. You know, I don't know how they do it with their 40, 50, you know, Marriott and Accor and all of that. But I think that you need to understand what your limitations are, and you need to know when to say, these are the brands I'm going to focus on. I'm going to slow down the, you know, ideation process, and I'm going to look to multiply these brands, you know, whether it's across the country or across geographic regions, or perhaps take them globally. I think you need to look back and you need to assess what is your overall growth strategy, what is the scalability, and how you're going to do it. And also, if you want to eventually go and talk to investors, you need to have that story, right? The story is a big part. Of course, there's the valuation, then there's the economics, and they're the financials. But the story and the passion behind what you're doing, it has to make sense. I can't, if I have one outlet and I have 30 brands of each, it's you know, there are going to be more questions than answers.
Yeah, you mentioned about all the brands you have, but they all have very unique identity. You know, they have their own sort of presence, but it's still Soho Hospitality DNA. How do you make sure of that? How is that something that you implement? You
know, the one thing that people ask me what I do best, I always say the one thing I know is I know how to touch the human heart. That is you know, I'm not the best at it, but I always say as an entrepreneur, you got to find the one thing that you're better than 6 out of 10. You may not be a 9 or a 10, but you're better than 6. Because if you're just 6, you're just above average. But if you're a 7 or an 8, then I think you have something. And I believe my X factor is I know how to touch the human heart. And the way I touch the human heart is experience by design. Experience by design is a word that a phrase that I used with my employees and my ideation teams a lot. And I'm like, it is when we are ideating concepts where there's nothing left for chance. There's nothing left for arbitration. Everything has been researched, planned, and executed with excruciating amount of detail. That is what I do across all my brands. And it's I don't really think there are any secrets behind it. I think it's really about the attention to detail. Right. But I think the one thing that is our X factor is that, you know, and it's one of the things that in our company values, the first line of our company values says, we are master storytellers. And I think that is the I would say the thread that you see that's woven through each one of our brands. There is a story that unfolds. There's a layering of the concept, but that layering is executed by design. It may come off as a spontaneous kind of a thing to a customer. He may kind of be, we always say like our job is to surprise our customers in a delightful way, right? That's hospitality. And our customers may just be like, oh, haha, that's cute. But that cute thing that they are talking about was research, planned, and executed with an excruciating amount of detail.
That's amazing. I mean, really, really love the passion behind that and all those sort of thoughts. And devil's in the details, you're right. It's, I mean, clearly that's been a big part of your success with all these amazing venues, but you still have more to go. And I know recently we talked about El Santo, which is a new place just opened. There's also a club, I believe, in the works. So you're still sort of expanding and growing quite fast. Can you tell us about these new concepts you've been doing, and maybe about when it comes to going to the whiteboard? What's your first steps? What do you really think about first?
Okay, so I always felt, in terms of El Santo, I always felt that Bangkok was missing an authentic Mexican restaurant. There is missing Burro, which a lot of people have been telling me that that's their go-to for authentic Mexican. There's also Ojo that's come up recently, which is a little bit more on the fine dining, away from elevated to fine dining. But I always felt that people think that Mexican food is Tex-Mex, right? And I also know that today, when you look at Gen Zs and you look at millennials, the big brother of experience is authenticity. People don't know what's real anymore. There's so much fake stuff going on. We don't know if content is real. We don't know if news is real. We don't even know now with photography if things are real. So with for us,
AI,
so for us, we believe that authenticity takes center stage, and we wanted to bring the essence of authentic Mexican cuisine to our restaurant. So we brought Chef Daniel Calderon from Mexico City, just as we brought a Peruvian chef from Lima, Peru, to open above 11. And we are serving in that restaurant authentic Mexican food. And then we combine that with entertainment dining, because we believe that just like Yankees entertainment dining, we also believe that entertainment dining is the way to go. That's what people want in the post-COVID era. But I will mention to you, sometimes doing some things and being the first, like for example, with El Santo. So I'll just give you an example. If I asked you what is a quesadilla, you're going to say it's a tortilla, flour tortilla folded, and it's got the stuffing in it, cheese and all this stuff,
chicken,
right? But the actual quesadillas that come from Mexico City are actually deep fried. And it's like almost like an empanada. Okay. And that's how they eat it. So a whole another set of challenges come where people think of Mexican food as Tex-Mex. They come to our restaurant expecting, Tex-Mex food, and instead they're given like aguachile and all these kinds of dishes that, chalupitas, all these things that they've never ever heard before. And that does present another set of challenges, because you got to manage expectations. People are expecting Tex-Mex. You're not Tex-Mex. They order a quesadilla. They go, well, this is not quesadilla. We don't like it. So I think there is an educational element that comes to play when you're doing something like that. But I think it's up to us to make sure, as part of the customer experience, we're also educating that consumer on what is real Mexican food. But I do believe that it's a long-term play. We may have challenges, in terms of educating people up front, but I do still believe that we're in the right direction, because authenticity takes center stage. So that's why we came up with El Santo. It's a beautiful space. It's got a restaurant. We've got an awesome live band that musicians that play there. We've got a interior space of 60 seats. We've got an outdoor section which almost mimics the bodegas or the street culture of Mexico City, very vibrant colors. And then we've got a tequila bar with the largest collection of tequilas in Bangkok. So nice. That's kind of El Santo. Now, moving into why we're doing a nightclub. I've always felt that there's only a handful of clubs in Bangkok that the expat community goes to. And I think that Bangkok needs some competition in that space. And I'm ambitious, I'm competitive, and I wanted to create something that would be what I think is missing in the. I think that people have lost a little bit of touch to what good music is. Now, I'm a little bit older. I lived in New York City when there was Masters at Work, Kenny Dope Gonzalez, Little Louis Vega, David Morales, Denny Tenaglia, Junior Vasquez. I was going, Roger Sanchez. I don't know. I was in New York. Yeah, I was in New York at that time. And there was a funny joke. I called a DJ and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to bring good music back. And so I played some of the stuff that I used to like from New York. And the DJ's response to me was, Rohit, you've got great taste. This is really good music, but unless you want a bunch of 50-year-olds hanging out at your new club, you're going to have to be a little bit more current. And he's absolutely right. But what I was trying to do was not bring the music of the 90s in New York, which was probably the best era, I think, in New York City, because none of, the city's all become completely gentrified now. There's no cool spots anymore. True. But there was really good music at that time. Good quality. I'm talking about the quality of the music and not necessarily the genre. And what I want to do is, I think that people still value good taste in music. I think I need to be current in terms of the expectations of the Gen Zs and the millennials, but I still believe that good music is universal. I think whether you're a 40, 50-year-old or a Gen Z or a millennial, I think that if you play the right type of quality music, I think that you can drive the right type of audience. And what I want to say is, and I'm not trying to bring down the other places, but I want to really focus on a great music program and bring good music back. I think we've lost some of that over the years. I think a lot of it has become commoditized. A lot of it doesn't resonate with me. I know that I'm not current, so I need to evaluate that as well. But I want to bring good music back. And then from a concept perspective, I wrote this beautiful story about this nightclub. I wrote it 4 years ago. It is one of the most, I can't tell you it because I'm superstitious.
Right.
So I never talk about my concepts until they get hatched. I think it's a grounding thing as well.
Sure.
Why show off and talk? Let the customers come and see it and decide. That's because it's a superstition. So,
yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
So I think keep your head down, be humble, do the work, and then launch it and then show it to the. So I can't talk about it, but I wrote this beautiful story about 4 years ago. I have so many presentations on this concept from the first iterations, and it's 2018 presentation, 2019. But I knew I needed a really, really incredible site for this space. And I finally found it. It's on Sukhumvit. It's under construction. It is probably going to be something that's very close to my heart because the story in itself and the layering of that story and the layers that it has, I think it's going to be something that the industry is going to really appreciate. I'm super excited.
Good. I'm excited for you, really. We will have to wrap up soon, unfortunately. But one thing I would like to ask, actually, one thing I kept hearing is you said that Bangkok needs this, or Bangkok doesn't have this. And I noticed that seems to be quite prevalent. And whenever you're going to launch concepts, what does the city need? So you obviously care about Bangkok a lot. And I guess you sort of look at what's lacking in the industry. So is that always something you look at too, the sort of macro environment, what's going on? And
yeah, I think I've always done things that I have been a first mover in some of, not trying to give myself lip service, but it is a fact that I'm the first Peruvian restaurant in Bangkok. It is a fact that I brought Latin music. I made Latin music successful in Bangkok. There was no Latin bands. I was the first to do a Latin band. I was the first to open a Latin nightclub in 2015.
So
Havana Social.
Yeah.
Nobody would have dared do that. I opened an Indian restaurant without any curries. which has become charcoal. I opened the largest chain of New York pizza Soho Pizza. I'm one of the few, I'm the first lifestyle authentic Mexican restaurant in Bangkok. The others are there, but they're not lifestyle oriented. They're not, trending on, really nice interiors. And, the other ones are a little bit more on the casual side. Those are our competitors are on the fine dining. So I've, and my, Yankee, let's talk about Yankee, the only Robata Yaki today in Bangkok. Gamification, lifestyle dining.
It's very fun.
So I've always kind of looked for gaps in the market, and if I, it's a gut feeling. You go with your gut, and I think that it's not about. And I always go with my gut. And when I walk into the site and I like it, I take it within 5 minutes.
Okay. Hey, I really wish we could have talked for hours. I feel like we could. We'll have to do a part 2 of the podcast.
Sure. Look, I love being here. I love talking to you. You're very natural yourself. You're really good at this.
Thank you. Well, I've been doing it a while.
No. You're really good at it. I mean, you make me so comfortable and you make me at ease, and I think you allow me to be myself. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Well, look, it's you have such a wealth of knowledge and experience, and just tapping into that is really great. So. For people in the audience who are listening on YouTube and Spotify, how can they follow you and your journey and Soho Hospitality?
So you can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm talking to my teams now about being more active. I do write a lot of blogs on LinkedIn about the industry, about my experiences in the industry. I'm thinking of starting a podcast soon.
Should.
I think you're inspiring me to do it as well. We also do this thing called a hospitality social, where I do a panel session where I'm the moderator. I bring one guy from the hospitality industry and 3 people. One guy from the hospitality is the hot seat, and I bring 3 people from outside of the hospitality to talk about hospitality. Wow. And the last time I had Top from BitCup as one of the speakers.
Okay, that's cool.
And it's really cool because I have non-hospitality guys giving perspectives of what the industry is doing and where it should go. Super interesting. And the next one is coming up soon.
I'll check that out. Rohit, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Thank you.